Yeah, so there are three sides to every story, and I would argue there are multiple sides to every story. So what I'm telling you may or may not be true. So who are the brethren? See, this is why I need three hands. This is what we're covering today, I hope. I don't know whether I'll get to the end at the rate I'm going, but I'll give it a shot. So who are the brethren? Well, they're called the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church now, but many of us who were once in that group still refer to them as the exclusive brethren because that's how we knew them. And Plymouth Brethren Christian Church doesn't somehow fit them in quite the same way. There are 50,000 members worldwide in these areas. Almost all members are born into the community. So of course they're socialized into a particular way of life, a particular culture, which teaches them mainly to reject mainstream society. So that means all what they call worldly interests, careers, technology, media, and so on. But it extends also to socializing and worshipping only with other members of the community. And other members are defined usually as those that take part in Holy Communion, aka the Lord's Supper. Now we're just going to call them brethren in this because just for brevity, but it's important to recognize that there is a very large group of brethren called the Open Brethren, and that's not the group I'm talking about today. It's important to recognize that. And this is the Brethren's website if you want to see what they have to say about themselves. So what do they believe? Well, on their website, they say quite correctly, this isn't working, is it? That they've been established for over 180 years. It's nearly 200 years, actually, and they claim to be a mainstream Christian church. And it's true that many of their beliefs are similar to other Christian groups. However, there are two significant teachings that are key to this presentation, and they are the doctrine of separation and the recovery of the truth. Sorry. Darby, whom we'll meet in a moment, wrote frequently on the doctrine of separation from evil. And it states on their website that there was growing dissatisfaction with the Anglican Church, and this brotherly fellowship or brethren rejected an ecclesiastical arrangement and focused instead on the individual's direct relationship with God, which all sounds great, doesn't it? So initially, the separation was in fact, sorry? Oh, I see. Well, you don't know when they're switching. It's all right. Can't cope with this. I've lost a page. No, I haven't. So yes, initially it was ecclesiastical, and in fact, the very first split in the movement was in 1848, and it was really over ecclesiastical or theological reasons, and that was when the Open Brethren split away, or rather, John Darby and co split from the Open Brethren, which was run by George Muller in Bristol, but there was a disagreement. But over time, it didn't just be an ecclesiastical separation, it actually extended to social interaction. And now they apply separation from evil to all aspects of life. And historically, and to some extent still today, this included various technological advances, as we'll see. Now, the other one, the recovery of the truth, is less easy to understand. They believed that the Holy Spirit was working through them, and this is in the early 1800s. They believed that the truth that began with the Apostle Paul was being recovered. And this truth had long been buried under church traditions and rituals. And they speak of the unbroken line from the founder Darby through to the current leader, who's Bruce Hales. And in fact, Bruce Hales is referred to in legal documents as Bruce Hales, the seventh minister of the Lord in the recovery. So their belief is that this truth is returning, it's coming back. But then how can the rules be changed if that's the case? So if something is okay one day, why isn't it the next, and vice versa? And they explain this by saying that some things need to change when the leader receives new light. We refer to it as, was it turning 180 degrees? The Lord's turned another corner. And then, of course, it's spread throughout the world, which is a lot easier now than when I was a kid, because we didn't even have a landline, let alone what's available now. Now, this has led to some puzzling experiences. So I know some people who were withdrawn from for having a mobile phone. Mobile phones are now allowed. And if you ask them how that can be, you're told that the person who was withdrawn from, excommunicated for owning a mobile phone, went ahead of the Lord. In other words, the truth about mobile phones hadn't yet been revealed. We're going to whiz quickly through the leaders. This is John Darby, described as the founder. Now, of course, in his time, there wasn't much in the way of technology, but he did say this: the world has gone totally wrong. There's been great developments in it, no doubt, such as telegraphs and railroads, arts and sciences, and so on. But that is just what Cain set out to do, because he was away from God. And that's quite a common phrase, isn't it? Yeah. People will tell you there's no harm in it. Why, no, of course there is not. The harm is in the use we make of such things. And there is an element of, I think we can kind of identify that to some extent, actually. So separation was about a return to purity and a move away from clericalism. A lot of people around in the early 1800s were unhappy about the way the churches had developed, and they wanted a simpler form of worship. So basically, that's what Darby was after. He was followed by Frederick Raven. Well, you know, there wasn't much technology in his time, so we haven't really got much to say about him. An austere, Victorian-looking gentleman. Then came James Taylor Senior, and he spoke out about the radio, which had been relatively recently invented, sort of towards the end of the 19th century. He described it as an anti-Christian vehicle, destructive to spiritual growth, and this is the key one: letting the filth of the world into the house. And so all radios and televisions were forbidden. So the only technology really that was around in those days was the telephone, and that was allowed. Actually, there then became an interruption to this unbroken line, because for 6 years there wasn't a leader. The leading brothers kind of jostled for position and tried to get into that role, but his son won that battle and came into power, if you like, in 1959, and he began to assert his father's earlier position, but he also tightened things up considerably, and he came out with a whole string of directives or rules. So the impact of separation became more systematized, I guess. So I'm going to say briefly something about it here. There were new directives coming out regularly, as I've said. The assembly, as they call the group, increasingly became like one large family. Protecting people from the cradle to the grave is how it was described. And their belief really is that if they can stave off the threat of evil and maintain a pure and godly way of life, then that is their goal. There's some examples of some directives here, and the first one, no eating with non-brethren, came in 1959, 1960, and it was then that my parents decided to leave, because my father could see no scriptural basis for this. And besides, as a businessman, you need to have business lunches, don't you? Well, guess what? They do now. But back then they didn't. We used to wear hats to church, but now it's scarves. They won't have semi-detached houses or drains. No beards or moustaches. I've no idea where that one came from. And no radios in your car. So if you bought a car with a radio in, you had to take it out. Radios and TVs are still forbidden. Laura Dyason, who helped me prepare this paper, wrote this in her thesis. They believe the doctrine of separation requires them to avoid using many forms of technology as a means of preventing the accidental or intentional consumption of unclean or worldly material. There's almost a feeling there that they're not grown up enough to be able to turn the internet off or whatever it is. He was followed by James Symington, and he just went along really with most of the teachings of previous leaders, but he added to the band list of banned items computers, because of course they were beginning to come in. But the Brethren still didn't really need any of this technology in business life, not in his time at any rate. But interestingly, he claimed in his ministry, his teachings, that he was the great-great-great-grandson of Sitting Bull. And he used to say occasionally, oh, that's the Red Indian in me, when in the meetings. That was a little tidbit there. He was followed by, John Hales, who really reiterated most of what all the other leaders had said. They were still not crucial for running their businesses, so it was quite easy to say no information communication technology, right? Then we hit the turn of the century, and in came the current leader, Bruce Hales. And he initially said this. I'll let you read it because I'm dying here. So it looks like originally he was just going along with everyone else, right? However, I like howevers. Around this time, information technology really became integral and important to successful businesses, right? Education and leisure as well, of course. And the Brethren began to struggle to remain competitive because they still weren't having computers. So it was suggested that it would be acceptable for the Brethren to use secular companies' computers. So they'd go next door to the factory or the office next door, use their computers. So it was a question of using, but not owning. You see, the thing is this, that if the Brethren businesses went under and they ceased trading, then the members would have to go out and work for worldly companies. So in order to maintain separation, they had to start bringing computers into themselves, into their own businesses. So for the Brethren businesses to thrive in this brave new world filled with computers and everything, they had to start allowing ICTs, because they offer employment to all members. Nobody works outside. I think that's true. 2005, mobile car phones were allowed. And then interestingly, in 2006, a company was set up called National Office Assist to oversee the procurement and adaptation of office computers and hardware and software, so that the Brethren could begin to own their own computers in their businesses. But they were doctored, they were restricted, a bit like the Chinese. You couldn't go onto the internet and see everything. There were only a limited number of places you could go to. And in 2008, personal computers were made available, but similarly, they were restricted, and as were mobile phones. So mobile phones, for example, had no SMS, no cameras, no apps, nothing, just a phone. And that was all you could have. In 2011, NOA became One Focus, and then eventually the Universal Business Team, which is still running. And because it's actually quite integral now to the use of the Brethren's ICTs, I'm just going to say something about it. They provide everything, consulting, coaching, etc., etc. And we have contact with quite a few insiders, and some of them can claim that there is a significant expectation that the members have to use the UBT services. And in fact, this has been said. Where is it? We must buy into the UBT initiatives because they are divinely inspired. So even though they could go outside and get some of these training and recruitment services, for example, at a more competitive rate, they don't. They keep it in-house. The program HR 100 is, HR stands for human resources, right? So it's like a hiring site. It's a bit like LinkedIn. So they're starting now to include software and apps on their phones that provide services that the normal people have, right? And this one ensures that all members are employed. The 100 refers to 100% employment. They organize, well, yes, they provide the hardware and the software. Brethren are not allowed to buy computers and so on from anywhere else, even though they might be considerably cheaper. And they organize group buying. Now you think, oh, great, that means they're all getting things cheaper. But it doesn't. Laura over here is shaking her head vehemently. If you are a member of the Brethren community, you have to pay the full retail price. And the difference goes into what they now call the ecosystem. So it doesn't benefit you really. But this is the really interesting one, Streamline 3, a tracking system. It's software that's been developed to track everyone's use of ICTs. And it's also believed, I'm going to say believed, because I'm not 100% sure, that they can also take screenshots of your computer use. These two are nodding their heads again, so I guess I'm on the right lines. And they take screenshots, and of course they know where you are because they can tell where your computer is. And then, so are you keeping up with me? COVID hit. Whoops, gone too far. COVID hit, right? Now, initially, I've heard from an insider that, oh, it's wonderful, the first 2 weeks, we could do what we wanted, no meetings to go to. But of course, the Brethren by now had got quite a lot of technology under their belt. So they started buying TV screens so that they could set up meetings, as it were, in their own homes. But they had to be arranged as if they were in their normal church hall. So there were rows of seats, men sat at the front, women and children sat behind. And there was quite a protocol developed. We got a screenshot of it here, of the things that they said. And there was a terrific stress on upholding normal standards. So you had to dress well. And there is a story, you can tell me if it's true or not, that Bruce Hales, the leader, got someone on the Zoom meeting to stand up and show his clothes he's wearing from head to toe, so that he could make sure that this member of the Brethren was properly dressed from the top to the bottom, including his shoes. And of course, that action made everyone else very aware. So the rest of us who sat at home with pajamas or something in the bottom half, just showing our top half, that would not have gone down very well. I've mentioned the seating. So yeah, of course, don't talk during the meeting. So picture yourself in your front room. And you, instead of, you know, your armchairs and everything in a nice circle, you're now in rows and you've got to be quiet. You mustn't talk. You're in a meeting and the children come into the front room expecting to be able to play as usual. But no, they mustn't. Shh, be quiet. Can't talk. So, you know, and then a reminder that you can be seen at all times. I'm getting a bit carried away here. I think I should get back to my... we had some personal reflections to show you of what how some people experience it. Insider one actually is now out of the Brethren, but he said that a few young people had some kind of lockdown craze where they shaved or gave their heads buzz cuts. So then a letter had to be read out so that all the young people who had done that would have to submit themselves to their local assembly and get right or something. The second one, me and my spouse were talking on the phone to my sibling and we decided to go for a away for the night. We packed our families in the car and we went to stay in a holiday house for 2 nights. We could never do that before because we had to be at the meeting every night. But because of the Zoom, we got away with it. Now, can you imagine that? You know, you're so restricted in life that you can't go away for 2 nights. So, how COVID changed Brethren life. So they've now got smart TVs and I've heard that they're actually watching television now. But does that mean they're opening up? Nope. Because of all the ways that they have of controlling people still. If you want to attend a meeting, You have to make sure you had to demonstrate you've had a COVID test, you've had all the vaccinations. And if you want to have a word with the man of God, as he's called, a leader, then you have to use an online form to apply for that permission. They now have a mixed way of holding meetings. At least this insider gave me this information. It may not be true for all localities. So Sunday, Monday, and Saturday, they're now in person, but the rest of the week, they're still on Zoom. And look at Thursday and Friday. 2 hours you sit and watch a recording, or rather listen to a recording, because that's all they've got is audio recordings. And then the use of technology ramped up. They started developing their own streaming platforms. Frank is their news service. Of course, you have to subscribe to it. Trove is a music app, but only Brethren music is played. Connect app, guess what that is? It's a dating app. Right? So you load your profile up if you're single and you want to find somebody, and there you go. Some leaders have been seen, some of the brothers have been seen wearing smartwatches, and there are now radios in the cars because you can't take them out anymore, can you? So they have to have those. I'm going to show you quickly. That's Frank News. There are stories that it's not, they take bits out of the news, but there's a story wrapped around that, which I don't have time to tell you really. So how is this shift in attitude helping to strengthen them? Is it? And this is the purpose of this talk really, because at first look, it seems that the brethren are opening up. They're becoming part of the world, right? But it isn't. Because they keep the money in the group through all the subscriptions, therefore they're supporting the ecosystem. And it gives the young people the feeling that they're not being deprived of what the world outside is enjoying. And you know that saying, you give someone an inch, they'll take a mile. I think they're allowing, that's what we think anyway, that Bruce Hales is allowing people to have that inch, but he's making sure they can't also take that mile. People have fewer reasons to leave, you see, if technology is allowed, because they're now seeing some of the world. And the insider that I spoke to said, the more comfy the follower, the more likely it is they will keep following. So they can't say anymore, but I want to have apps on my phone, but I want access to the internet. Internet is still restricted, but somehow they do manage to get on YouTube. But the brethren leaders are still controlling through this streamlined 3 tracking system. So the ecosystem, in other words, relies on successful businesses to employ members. And in order to be successful, they've had to embrace modern technology. So I hope I've shown, or we've shown, how their 2 key beliefs of separation and the recovery of the truth explains the rapid, for them at least, development of the use of ICTs after many, many decades of rejecting them. And they've rejected them. This technology they've now got is the pipeline of filth that was referred to all those years ago. They changed with the rationale that the recovery, that the truth is being recovered. And it changed because the very doctrine of separation was really being challenged by the changes in the world. That kind of forced them, really. It forced their hand. And by embracing it and cleverly controlling it, they actually are using it for their own ends, and they're managing to maintain that separation. And that was it. So if you want to email either of us, those are our email addresses. Yes,